Welcome back to another episode of Rogers Rules. Happy belated 4th of July. We had happy belated Bobby Bonilla Day last week, so now we're going to wish everybody a belated 4th. Hopefully you kept all your limbs, didn't get struck by any fireworks. Hopefully you saw some great shows. Did you guys enjoy the 4th of July?
Always do. Every year.
What a great holiday. You know, having a day off in the summer, not too shabby.
Yeah. Well, especially after, you were there for College World Series. It gets to be a long time, even though it's only 12 days. And then, we're right into football season basically after that. So it's nice to have a little bit of a break before the craziness again.
I'll tell you, too, it was nice having rain last week because I was getting really worried about droughts. And, living in the Midwest, we all know and experience droughts all the time. Either we get a ton of rain or we don't experience anything. And there was a year, I don't remember how long ago it was, but nobody could shoot off fireworks because of the drought warning.
Yeah. It was
not fun.
Yeah. I saw a video right before the weekend, actually, that terrified me. It was like a couple days before. I don't know where this was, but somebody did something wrong, and maybe it was a cigarette. I don't know, but their whole entire garage was just shooting fireworks out at their neighbors.
Oh, no.
So somebody messed up.
All right, guys.
So I am thankful for the rain also. Maybe that could have helped them, but that was terrifying to me.
Next year, Cam, we have to add into our disclaimer, don't have an exposed flame around fireworks.
Yep. There's always that one person.
Yeah.
Always that one every single year. Also, yeah, I really enjoyed the 4th of July, I think. I usually end up putting down some cold ones and sitting around a fire. So I believe I had a great time. But
yeah, which is great. You're here. As long as you made it to the podcast, that's all that matters because you're the one that helps this go. And who also helps this ship go, I should say, is Sausha. And that's why she's on the show. She's our fearless leader. And it was funny, Sausha. I was actually playing golf with a buddy that came to the first Hurrdat Sports College World Series and goes, man, you know what, because he had said, oh, is Sausha your boss? And I'm like, yeah, Sasha's my boss. And he's like, it's probably really cool having somebody that can stay super organized, but also know all the technical behind the scenes stuff. I'm like, actually, yeah, that's how I feel because she can just show up anywhere and get the job done. She can talk on the mic. She's doing that right now. Yeah. She can set up everything. She knows how to edit everything. She can shoot anything. She can keep my loose cannon in check. She can do it all.
I do my best. Yeah, it's kind of, I was thinking about that the other day, actually, when I was just reflecting on College World Series, and there is just a lot that goes on behind the scenes that goes into all of that. It's a lot of coordination. It's a lot of setting things up. It's a lot of hauling equipment. It's a lot of scheduling. And then you have the editing and the cutting out for social media and all of that other stuff. And it was just I don't know. Sometimes I'm just you know what, guys? I have a plan. It's just in here for right now. I haven't put it on a document, which I'm also known for, documents and spreadsheets. Mm-hmm. That's the thing I'm probably the best at anymore, but I've been around for a while. So it's always fun to hear feedback like that. So whoever said that, thank you. I appreciate it.
Sash knows how to just get the job done. That's essentially what we're saying. And I said this on Tuesday, Sash, you couldn't build Hurrdat Sports without a Sausha. You just couldn't. We wouldn't be able to be as far as we are without the guidance and the leadership there. And then I also gave the listeners a little tease because in a way, Hurrdat Sports and the trajectory that we grew at is the same way Nebraska is trying to build with Coach Rhule. When you have the right person in charge, you're able to take those necessary steps forward. And, there was an interview last week with Joel Klatt, lead analyst on college football, a great guy. I saw him at the UFL championship, talked to him a little bit. He helped run broadcast that game. And, he sat down with Coach Rhule and there were so many great things in there. And we all know this, when you sit down with Coach Rhule, you're always going to get something that you weren't expecting. And even though we know his personality, we know how he operates, we saw 1 year of his work, even though now it feels like we're going into year 4 for whatever reason. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way, but it doesn't feel like year 2 of Coach Rhule. And I think that's telling because of how quickly he was able to build a team build a program that is not only one that you can root for, because they will be good. I believe they'll be good, but also one that people want to be a part of. The biggest offseason win in a while was Dylan Raiola. And he's the best thing that happened in Nebraska for a lot of different reasons. You filled the biggest spot on the roster that needed filling, and you got a recruit in the door that Nebraska hasn't touched for a long time. And it's even more telling to have a guy like him. And Coach Rhule said this. He said, when you have a guy that his dad played here, he was a legend here, his uncle coaches here, he's been around the program, when he knows the ins and outs of the program and still says, yeah, this is the place I want to be after getting, offered everywhere else in the country and committing to other places in the country, what does that tell other playmakers? They're doing something right. Dylan Raiola wouldn't just end up here because he had family in the business. We knew he wouldn't. Well, we actually thought he wasn't going to end up here. And all of a sudden, you do things the right way. You talk to a recruit the right way. You treat that person the right way. You show them your program. Coach Rhule is the epitome of a painting in a museum. You can see everything. You see exactly what you want, or everything that this program is offering. And that's what made Dylan Raiola say, yes, I want to play for you.
Well, not only that, but then look at the trickle-down effect of other high star athletes that they've also recruited because of his recruitment. Something that is really special, I think, that isn't maybe talked about enough. It's not just Rhule when he is out in public talking about the program. It's a trickle-down effect to the coaching staff and then to the players who can speak highly of the program and just being in it. There are tons of true freshmen on this team that haven't even seen the field yet, that are going out into just the community and speaking so highly of the program. I'm not sure that I can, in recent memory, recall such the tenor around the program is just different under this coaching staff. And I think that the fact that they are also willing to make available to the media, the consultation staff, when whatever that looks like, whatever part of the program, having your fitness or the nutrition, I can't think of her name, Coggins, be made available at a media availability, or, strength and conditioning coach. Yes, that's happened before for strength and conditioning, but it was like a one-off interview. Actually having a media availability where they then took people from the media to see the new facilities where they work out and actually go through and be taught how to make a meal like they do for their players is invaluable. One, because it's insight into program that you don't normally get to see. And to me, that really stands out just because it's an inside look that you just don't get anywhere else. It becomes more real to the fans because they're imparting that even on the media. But even having some of that insight is I don't know. I don't want to say crazy, but it's just kind of unheard of anymore. I feel like there's a lot of programs that hold things very, very close to them and don't want to have people see what the inner workings of that stuff look like. But I think anymore, that's going to serve them well in the long run because people can, from the outside, can see what they are actually doing in their program. It's not just conversations. It's not just words. You're actually seeing what they're doing behind closed doors to build this thing.
People can relate to that. Yeah. And that's another huge piece, because if you have a high school football player in your family, Sausha, you have one. Yeah. If you're able to see the nutritionist build a meal, and then you're like, hey, how about we do this at home? Like, if we want to be the best, we have to play like the best. And it's so great to have that resource. We all love to be in the know. That's like deep down in a human's body, we want to know everything. We want to be nosy. We just want to be able to tell somebody like, hey, did you see X, Y, and Z video? Like, this is why I'm a fan of this team. When I watch the NFL draft and I see the stories of Josh Jacobs, who lived out of his car, he took care of his family. Why would I know that story if I wasn't an Alabama fan, or if I wasn't, in touch with Josh Jacobs on the regular? I know it because they told me it on draft night, and that gave me that allowed me as a fantasy football player to say, this guy's probably hungry. Like, this guy probably wants to make a name for himself. And he ended up being one of the best backs in the league. He led the league in rushing a year ago before Christian McCaffrey. So you want to be able to attach yourself to a story. And that's what Nebraska does a great job of, is giving you a little bit of that insight like you're talking about when they did those rewinds last season. Coach Rhule said he wasn't going to do them again this year. I really hope that he takes back his word, because those were so integral and crucial to my development as a fan. And I got to learn more about how these players operate in and out of the room. Yes, some may have considered it Last Chance U, or some may have considered it Hard Knocks. No, this was like a way to separate yourself from every other college football team. And that's what you're doing right now. Like, you're trying to separate yourselves from the rest. If you could show a recruit that this is how we operate without actually bringing them into the building, you know how many people would kill for exposure like that? Nebraska just knows how to get the job done, and they do it the right way. Like, they do things the right way. And we couldn't have, nobody's shocked that Coach Rhule does things the right way. And he's always owned up to almost everything in life. But this is just, it's a season for me that I'm like, there's no way that the typical Coach Rhule season is about to be seen. It's not going to be a 5-7 to a 6-6 bowl game. I don't believe it. I think they're much further ahead than people think. I think we're skipping year 2 and the tentative history schedule and going right to year 3 when we see this team competing for a high-level bowl game. I made a prediction a long time ago. Cam and Avery called me crazy, Sash. This team's going to be ranked in the top 10 at one point this season.
10?
They're going to be ranked in the top 10 at some point this season. And you know how easy it is to get into the top 10, especially early on? All you have to do is stay undefeated. And if you look at their schedule at the beginning of the year, you have 7 games that if you can get by your non-con teams, which has been a struggle for Nebraska lately, if you can get by those teams, and then you get by Colorado on a Friday night that people can't wait to see this game. This night game is going to be off the charts. Is it a Friday or a Saturday? Maybe a Saturday. It's a night game, though.
It's a night game. It's a 7 o'clock.
And that's all that matters. People can't stop talking about this Colorado game and how much they can't wait to flood the gates. They'll be in the building. There won't be an empty seat during warmups. They're going to let.
There never is.
Right. But they're going to let Dion. They're going to let Shadir know everything that's about to happen to them before the game even starts. Like, they're going to be in their head. That's this team. I think that top 10 is I'm not going to call it crazy. I think, and I don't think it's totally out of range, but I do think that you need to slow your roll a little bit. There she goes.
And
me in check. I told you.
And it's not any knock on this coaching staff, and it's not any knock on the caliber of players that they have brought in. But there are things that they will need to shore up and be able to do that. UTEP, probably a win. Colorado, how many? I haven't been keeping up. I just know that their roster was decimated after the season last year, and we don't even need to get on that because that's a totally different conversation that we don't need to talk about here because they're not even in the same stratosphere as Matt Rhule and this Nebraska football team. Northern Iowa,
win.
I think it's a win, but they have struggled against Northern Iowa before. Illinois, probably a win. Purdue,
probably a win.
But you thought
probably
that last year.
But here's the deal.
That last year.
Yes, but this team is different than last year's, and that's what I'm saying. This team is polar opposite.
That.
There's a quarterback this year.
You don't know who's starting.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Don't. And we all know who's starting.
Everybody knows who they want to start because of the promise that he's shown. He's not guaranteed to start. Nobody's guaranteed to start on this team.
One's
everybody works.
But let's not just talk about that it's not going to happen. Like we know that it's going to end up a certain way.
I'm not definitively going to say that Dylan Raiola is the starting quarterback at Nebraska in July.
I was saying it in April, so you can't change.
Well, I understand that a lot of people were. I totally understand that. I do think that a really interesting part. I'm not going to get back into the season prediction and the top 10 thing.
We don't need to.
The family.
I'll let that rest. I'll let that rest on top of the mountain.
That's what the title of the episode is. Andrew says ranked top 10. No, I do think that the family aspect that's constantly mentioned in any interview, and now from the coaching staff, and you hear it from the players. I heard something from somebody, and I don't know if this is true or not, so it's hearsay, but I believe it because you've seen it. They have to hang out with each other outside of football practice, outside of the field. They have to, I believe, pick a sporting event that is not football related, obviously, and go to it to support the other athletics. So it's not just family as a football team, it's family as in the University of Nebraska. And I don't know if this is a direct correlation, but have the football players going to games, I think, was an easy translation for other players to then other athletes to then want to come to their games. That's always been a thing in the student section and all of that, but I think that you see it a lot more. And it's not just football going to basketball games. It's, basketball players going to softball games. It's going to baseball games. It's supporting a whole community surrounded within the, the athletic department and just the University of Nebraska. What's good for the University of Nebraska is automatically good for the fan base, obviously. But the family element of that, I also believe, helps them extraordinarily with recruiting. Because if I was going to send my stepson somewhere, I want to make damn sure that when he leaves this house, he's going to be taken care of at wherever that next step is. Because us as parents are not there to be with him every day or guide him. So you do need people who are going to care about those athletes. And I think that that's like, I don't think it's undervalued. I think it's being more and more valued because it is spoken about a lot more. But I think that that's a huge element in getting a lot of these players here. It's not just the players going out and advocating for the program. It's also the family element of that.
It goes back to that transparency we were talking about at the very beginning. Like, you can see inside this program, and they're not hiding anything. They'll never hide anything at Nebraska, at least not under Coach Rhule's watch. They're not going to hide it. And we saw the pour last year. The foundation has been poured. Now they're building a house. And that's what I kind of loved. There was a question from Joel that was asked to Coach in terms of, like, how do you build a team to reach the college football playoff? Because essentially that's what we're all striving for. Right. I say that's what teams are striving for in the college landscape. And Coach Rhule, again, answered it perfectly. It was to build a team to reach this point. It's about having a team that can, that has been hot down the stretch, that has enough playmakers, enough depth down the stretch of the season, and that can stay hot at year's end. But it's, you can't just get there overnight. First, you got to build this team. That's that foundation, right? It's not about just building for a team that can reach it. It's about having a team that can win it all when you're there. And so the parity in college football is excellent now with NIL, with the transfer portal. People may not love that stuff, but let's just really go back 6 years and say, did you really love seeing Clemson and Alabama and Florida State in the championship every year? Nobody loved that unless you came from that state or that fan base. But now there's so much parity because you can get a Dylan Raiola at your school. Anybody can get a Dylan Raiola. You can go to Coastal Carolina and get a Dylan Raiola, because a lot of it goes in terms of money in their pocket, for one, but it also goes to, now I don't have to go to Alabama in order to win. And that's what I think a player is thinking about at the end of the day is, go make your money. Go get paid somewhere. But I can go somewhere that I feel like I'm a good fit. Like, if I had 3 offers, if I had Nebraska, if I had Iowa, and I had Minnesota, and Minnesota was not really like giving me that familial side of things, but they were giving me the most money, then now I'm going over to Iowa and saying, okay, well, Iowa was really great with family, but can't really match what I'm looking for in money. And then you go to Nebraska and you get them both. Well, if you can find a place that marries the two, that makes you feel at home, that end of day, that's where that player is going to end up. So you need the right person at the helm. You need the right supporting staff, as you talked about at the beginning. I didn't even give Tony White enough credit yet on this episode. This guy, he was the reason Nebraska was in most games last season. Yeah. The turnover margin, again, was 17 last year. Coach Rhule said it. If that happens again, he'll be playing golf. He's not coaching this team. So it's not going to happen again. But all the pieces are kind of in place right now. We haven't seen any football. Everything that I say, I mean, it could be totally outrageous or it could be right on par. Like there's no in between either. It's to the right, it's to the left. We can't marry any idea yet because we haven't seen it yet.
Not even fall practices.
But once they actually step foot on the football field and we actually see how they're working through different issues, like I thought adding Jalen Gramstad was an awesome addition to this team because they had zero experience. There was nobody in that room other than Harburg that came in with experience. Luke Longvall, even though he's a sophomore, he didn't play at all last season, so you can't really consider that experience. Danny Kalen, he comes in. Yes, he's the hometown kid. He's the hometown boy, but he's a freshman, no experience. Dylan Raiola, he may be the best quarterback prospect in the nation, but he hasn't taken one snap of college football. Heinrich Harburg's the only one in this offense outside of now Jalen Gramstad that did. But when you bring in a guy like Gramstad and you tell him like, hey, and they didn't tell him his role, right? We don't know if it's going. Jalen Gramstad could start for all we know. NAIA Player of the Year, a powerhouse program. He won a championship at that school. Like, who knows? Who knows who they end up with at day's end? I can think one way, but who knows, right? But if you have that experience to have a guy that's been there for 4 years that can help mold a Danny Kalen, a Dylan Raiola, and give them like the ins and outs. Like you can get as much as you want in terms of Raiola, talking with your dad, talking with your uncle, talking with your quarterback's coach, or working with Patrick Mahomes. You can get all of that, but you don't know the feel. You don't know after you take that first snap and 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, and now you're throwing a football, and you thought Tristan Albano's job was hard last year. Think about it as a quarterback, and you're trying to time a route. You don't know any of that yet, but Jalen Gramstad's played it. Jalen Gramstad can help. I mean, as long as you want to absorb all information like a sponge, which everybody in this room seems to want to.
Yeah.
His addition to the school, did we sell it a little short? Did we hit it like right at its mark? Did we give it too much credit? Maybe in the middle. I saw a lot of, oh wow, they added Jalen Gramstad, and people were like, what? Like, why would we add a quarterback? Like we have a quarterback. But I think this coaching staff is playing chess while we're all playing checkers.
Oh, absolutely.
They're 10 moves ahead.
I was just going to say that, some of the comments that I saw were like, why do we need an NAIA quarterback? It's like, why does it matter? If he works hard enough, he went to a camp, they saw something in him. He worked hard enough to get here. So
he didn't just get it on his accolades.
Don't sell him short. One thing that I do also appreciate about some of the comments that he's made just in past interviews, but I believe he also touched on it in the Joel Klatt interview, was that everybody practices. Like there isn't any single person at a practice or at a weightlifting session that isn't doing the same thing as a person beside them. How hard are you going to work? I think that when it comes to NIL and things like that, that a lot of times the money can be enticing to leave, to go somewhere, even if the program isn't as good. They're a week and left.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going to fault somebody for making money. Put some legislation on it. Put some more legislation on it. Don't let it be the Wild West like it was before some of this legislation came down. That's another conversation for another day. What I wanted to talk about Nebraska specifically when it comes to this arena is that, one, he mentioned it. Nebraska doesn't have debt in their athletic department. They have a collective in the state of Nebraska. I think there's a couple of them actually, but there's a main one. And I think that the other thing that goes hand in hand with this is even in the NIL era, even with the transfer portal era, yes, we saw some attrition last year, but some of the main big players decided to stay for another year. You've got Nash Hutmacher, you've got Ty Robinson, you've got Isaac Gifford. Mm-hmm. There's 4 other players that are in a 5th year that are deciding to come back. They didn't have to do that. They could have gone somewhere else. They could have been a grad transfer.
They could have decided football was over for them.
Exactly. But they decided to stay here because of this coaching staff and believing in what they're building. That's huge. That's invaluable. You can't pay for that. You built that as the football program.
Sasha, I know I'm jumping ahead, but these guys are also sticking around because they know there's a bowl game in sight. Like they're not putting their body on the line for another season. If they did not truly believe by year's end that this team would have 6 wins. Like they're not coming back to play for a team that's winning 4 games.
We had a freaking bowl graphic prepared for a month and a half.
Hurrdat Sports cursed Nebraska is what Sausha is saying. No, we were ready. We were ready to go. Everybody was ready.
thought that Michigan State game was the one.
And then
we asked people outside.
And then it was that Maryland game, right?
Yeah.
When you have that locked up and, maybe it was a coaching mistake, maybe it was a player mistake, call it whatever you want. There were plenty of opportunities for that team last year who didn't have a set quarterback by season's end. Like Harburg was just kind of thrown in the mix and said, maybe you can do it. They didn't have like anything set in stone. And by season's end,
Chuba
we were
was hurt too. Chuba got hurt again.
Yeah, Chuba did get hurt. Yeah. But by season's end, we were like, this team could do it any one of these games. Iowa wasn't scoring points. That they didn't score anything.
Iowa game was on Big Ten, Big Ten in 60, like a month and a half ago.
Oh, please tell me you sat down and watched it.
I sure did. I was looking for myself, especially on within the last 2 minutes of the game, because I hoofed it to the other side of the field just in time for it to be the ball to be turned over. And then that was like it. And I was like, I forgot in that moment how you could just, hear the air leave the stadium. And, I actually think I made a comment on social media. I'm like, nobody wanted that game. The coaching staff didn't want it. The players didn't want it. Clearly obviously the fans didn't want that game to turn out the way that it was. But for a first-year coaching staff to make the strides that they did coming off of a coaching staff that we don't need to talk about, and getting them to at least a place where at the end of the season, even in post-game press conferences, you could tell by the word choices that they had bought into what this program was trying to be and what this coaching staff wanted them to be. For it to be that much of a swift switch around, that's really hard to do. I don't know. Cam, I'm sure that you remember this. When Bo Pelini left he didn't leave, you know what I mean? But when he was no longer here, that was a very turbulent time for those players that were on that team. And then the next coaching, the staff that came in, that was such a literally direct opposite of what the coaching staff before it was. That was a very tough time for those players. And I think that this coach, there were still was there anybody left from Riley at the beginning of the season last year?
Currently this season? I don't think so.
Beginning of last season, though. Anyway, I feel like there was one or two.
I gotta dig into the vault.
I feel like there were one or two. I could be totally.
Well, Riley was there in 2017, right?
Yeah.
So 6 years.
Yeah.
Technically, there could have been at least one or
COVID,
two.
Though, right?
You got the extra year. They could play 6 years. So
someone's gonna light me up in the comments on this.
I don't think that anybody.
They're gonna.
If you know
be like, it was this person.
If you know that information off the top of your head, like kudos to you. But most people,
Damon after this.
Most people do not.
I think it was at least one or two players, but I believe that they were had interviews last year. I really cannot think of who it was now off the top of my head, but they were spoken to about what the transition was like between Riley and then Frost and then Rhule.
Mickey Joseph and then Rhule.
Oh, Mickey Joseph and then Rhule. So it was Riley, Frost, Mickey, and then Rhule.
Now,
anyway,
Mickey can be
interim,
counted, may not be counted because of that reason. You're right.
Yeah. But it was just it can be very, very turbulent. And I think that this coaching staff did a particularly good job right from the jump coming in. I recall when he first got here, obviously he won everybody over with that press conference. I've never been more enamored with a person I've never met my entire life than after I was when he gave his opening statement. I was like, holy cow. From that moment on, I think a lot of people that day were blown away, but then to see how they've put these pieces together and continue to build this staff around them. And if you talk to any one of the staff, they are a mirror image in their own way of what Rhule is as a person. Transparent, honest. He'll be hard on you if he needs to, but he'll let off when he knows that you need that too. I think that all of those things, the psychological part of that too, is all very, very important and undervalued stuff that we don't talk about enough. It's Why didn't they do 17-a-days? Why are they not training like they didn't remember the Titans? Like, yes, you also have to treat your body well. He made a statement last year before the season started because somebody asked him why they were going back to basics in training in the weight room. He's like, well, when you go back to basics, you train people how to properly lift with the right mechanics and you avoid injuries down the line and later in the season. Like, who says that out loud? To just
Coach
us
Rhule.
common folk,
Coach Rhule. There's very few people that would, and that would admit that. I mean, is that to some people that'd be embarrassing to say like, hey, we have to like restart everything. Like we have to go back and act like these kids are 10 in the weight room in order to get them where we want them to be. But as long as the buy-in is there, that's where he's so upfront with us, the media, and he's so upfront with his players, with everything. He's upfront just in general. Now, we'll end this topic here, and then I got one more thing I want to get to. Last season, before the start of 2023, we were saying this team just needs to learn how to win. They need to believe in themselves that late in games, 2 minutes, that they can win it. After last season and now going into this season, where do you think this team is? Because it's not that anymore. This team did win last year. They won 5 games last year. It was the most that Nebraska has seen in a long period of time. Unfortunately, I don't want to like make like a, hey, here's your first place ribbon or anything to that, but it's fact. But where are they going into this season? Where do you think?
I think personally, he actually answered that question in the Joel Klatt interview. If you haven't listened to that yet, because you've been living under a rock or we're busy because there's a holiday weekend, go. It's a good 26 minutes of interview. I think that, and this was over multiple coaching staffs. Like before Bo Pelini, it's been a problem for Nebraska teams for whatever reason. I remember talking on Game Time with Nick Baugh, which went away a long time ago, like 8 years ago, long time ago, having this very same conversation with him. Like, why don't they just know how to close it out? Why don't they believe in themselves? Why don't they know how to win? I think that Coach Rhule himself answered that question beautifully. You don't just give up. Like, even when Colorado was going to storm the field, you still go over and you shake their hands. You are sportsmanlike athletes and you are going to act like it. I think that there's been a lot of confidence instilled and a lot of teaching and a lot of drill work and being close with their coaches and being able to take constructive feedback on how to improve at their whatever position that might be, that I think that you don't see some of the, I don't think last year it was giving up. I think that there were just some mistakes that happened in some of those games. And I think before this coaching staff, they had the tendency to like almost give up, self-defeat, self-destruct, because they weren't given the tools to be able to handle themselves in that situation. And as athletes, that's really hard to overcome. I honestly believe that this coaching staff has been able to get a lot of these players there, mentally and physically prepared wise.
Cam, what do you think? What do you think the answer to that question is?
Well, I know, going back to this interview, I didn't get to watch the full thing, but I watched the first few minutes of it. And I know he mentioned something about not knowing what culture is, or not being able to, like, what is this culture? What do you mean? But things like that, where it's like, no, we're doing sportsmanship. We're going out there and we're shaking hands. We're not just leaving the field. We're going back to basics on weightlifting and just the basics of playing football. Those types of things are how he's establishing that culture. But he doesn't want, again, he's a very upfront man of the people, and he'll tell you. But I think that's kind of a part of it. It's like he doesn't want it to be like, oh, this is what the culture is. It's like the culture is we're just good people playing some football, and that's what we get out there and do. So
yeah, and I think my answer is kind of a combination of it all, because even though last season it was, oh, how do you win games? How do you win in the final 2 minutes of the game? And that's just where everybody rested. But I think it is just all the puzzle pieces are there. They just have to connect them. They have to properly just build the puzzle. And once they can finally complete the puzzle, how do you build a puzzle? You put the edges in first, and then you fill in the middle. They have the edges. The edges are there.
a chaotic person, but yeah.
Yeah. If you are, get off the show. Get off the stream. We don't want to talk to you. I'm the only chaotic person allowed, and I still do the borders first. But it's just about putting the pieces in place and just being basic. Last season, I thought they got cute in a lot of different ways in the game where they didn't need to be cute. They didn't need to put a team away. Maybe it was just getting 3 points, and they owned up to that. They made their mistakes. They owned their mistakes. And then, if it was a mistake in their head, they were going to adjust. If they believed that was the right thing to do, they're going to do it again. They're going to hit the gas pedal once they get back in that situation. It's just about staying basic and knowing that once you hit this benchmark, you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one, because you're not just, again, going to be a college football playoff team overnight. You won't. Right. And if you think you are that, that rando TCU team or that random Cincinnati team, like, good for you. You did it one time. What happened the years following? Absolutely nothing. You don't want to be a fluke. You don't want to be a random spark. You want to be a team that does it over and over again.
You want to continue and rebuild. What am I saying? You want to continue to build a legacy, but also build the team back up to the legacy that so many people were fond of.
Mm-hmm. And Nebraska being good at football, I know people outside the state border will call it unbearable. Mm-hmm. No, Nebraska being good at football would be great for football again.
Yeah, it's phenomenal for the Big Ten.
It's just kind of you go through history, and Miami got good at football again. They were really good, they were bad, and then they got good. Florida State was really good, bad, really good. It would only be good for football for Nebraska to get good again. It's kind of like how people will. I mean, there's people out there that will just say it. Colorado and Coach Sanders, Deion, like, we may not believe that it's great for football, but we always talk about having a villain in some sort of sport. You look at the WNBA, you have Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, like, however you want to write the story, Deion Sanders is in some way, shape, or form in somebody's head good for football because he's going to get eyes. Like, you don't have to buy into it. Yeah, you don't have to buy into it, but it's just what it is. Yeah. So if Nebraska can get good at football again, not only would it be great for the Big Ten, like Sausha said, it's just good for the game. People will tune in and remember, gosh, instead of saying, oh, man, we were so good in the 90s, and then I don't know what happened. Now it's going to be like, hey, do you remember the 90s when a play like that happened, and now we're seeing it again? Like, all those happy memories turned bad will just correspond with one another.
Absolutely.
Now, Sash, College World Series. I want to get to this real fast. Not only just College World Series, but I want to bank it off of what we were just talking about. You're all over the place. College World Series, Omaha Supernovas, Nebraska football, all things basketball. I know I'm
Pinnacle
Bank, hockey, Pinnacle Bank. Yeah, like I buried a lot of things, but Sasha's everywhere. You may never see her, but she's everywhere. I want you to give the people a little 411 on, like, what happens behind the scenes, because we love seeing what happens behind the scenes with Nebraska football and everywhere else. Yeah. But in all the places that you're at, take us through how Hurrdat Sports pushes the behind the scenes content and like how the show kind of runs because of the things that you do.
Yeah, well, first of all, I have a very hard time having it just be everything that I'm doing.
Yes, yeah, Sasha can never pat herself on the back.
It's literally, it really is all of us. Honestly, it's Cam, it's you, it's every single person on the team is a very important cog to the whole entire thing that we have going on over here. So I can't
Sasha
say
is still the engine that makes this group go.
It's always we. When we talk to each other, it's always we. I don't know how we got that to be there. Probably because that's how I talk. Thank you, Coach Rhule, for making it very clear to me that the way that you talk to your people is how they end up talking to each other. Anyway, no, I think when something that is maybe not well known is that first year at College World Series was 2022. This was our third World Series this year, but I had a hard time explaining that to people. They're like, wait, how is it your third? But it was 2022. I was like, well, because you're not one when you're born. Anyway, that first year,
and she's still just as sarcastic to us.
It was just me, Andrew, Anna Bellinghausen, and Grace Dunbar. I do not know to this day how we achieved that year with just that many people and the equipment that we had. I really have a hard time understanding how we did that.
It's wild.
I know that it was a little bit more stressful. That was the very first event that we ever did. In 2023, at the beginning, we grew to 9 people. So we added a social media strategist to help out with that. We added some camera people and photographers and video people. By the end of 2023, we were at 24 people, including radio. But insight to behind the scenes, I mean, honestly, one thing that I firmly believe in is that if we're going to put our whole ass over here, we damn well better have the same energy for every other sport that we can possibly cover, because it's all important. Men's basketball isn't more important than women's basketball. Volleyball isn't more important than hockey. High school athletics on one spectrum are not more important than the other sports on the other spectrum of high school. Like, it is very important that we provide stories to people about the athletes that they love within the state of Nebraska and regionally a little bit. I try there are some things that we can't cover, but that's okay, just because, you can't, run people ragged, but we do try our very best to make sure that we have the same energy for everything that we're doing. At the beginning of each year, our sports year begins, like, it just ended.
Yeah.
After the College World Series, the sports calendar year begins again when we get to Pinnacle Bank Championship. It actually starts at the end of this month with Big Ten football media days. That's how long the sports calendar year is. In July, I start putting every single team's schedule on a spreadsheet, and I go through per season. It's every school, Creighton
and high schools.
And high school, I don't put on, because high school is a little bit harder. It's easier for us to be able to, Mike is going to go a lot more. Mike Sauter will go a lot more places than we do.
Builds his own schedule.
Yeah, and then he will help us. He's very in tune there, and so with big game chain or game of the week for him. Big game chain is sick, by the way. That was an idea that happened in a conversation in passing. And I was like, no, we're doing that. Like, and we will have chain.
To be everybody's favorite thing at the high school level. Everybody's favorite.
But so I go through and I start assigning stuff. I go through each month and I pick, it's really going to depend. If we've got supernovas, we might have to adjust a little bit on coverages and stuff like that. I try to be really mindful of work-life balance, because that's also important. I love that you all love your jobs, but your families are also important. School, family time, need a mental health day are all, I don't need to know. I just need you to let me know that you need that time off. It's never going to be a no from me. I think that, that stuff is important. The other thing that really makes this whole entire thing work is how collaborative we are with each other. There is not a single bad idea. Some ideas just need shaping, and they need maybe some help and insight from our fellow teammates on how to make this a thing that goes. The Baylor Shireman thing was literally another in passing comment. I'm like, let's meet about it. How do we make this happen? Couldn't have turned out better.
Awesome. So awesome.
Anna Bellinghausen, Kyle Byers, Brandon Tiedemann did a beautiful, wonderful job on that. I mean, I just, what makes this whole thing work also is that we all like each other. We respect each other. We feel comfortable being around each other or going to each other when, somebody has a strength that we may not. And then the last part of this is meeting individually with everybody. Like, is there something that you aren't feeling? Is there something you want to get better at? Do you know how David ended up being on graphics? Schumacher? He's like, I love doing graphics, dude. I'm like, okay, then what do we need? What do we do? Like, what can I get for you that gets you to be able to do what you would like to do? Also wanted to take more photos. And I'm like, bet. Like, okay, let's get a camera in your hands. Like, how do we get you at more events so that you can just take some pictures and don't have to do the social media thing? So, listening, respecting each other, and, understanding too that sports are a grind, man. Like this, the first question I always ask people when they want to work with us is like, okay, I get everybody loves sports, but like, do you like them? or do you love them? Because you really, really, really need to love and understand the importance of the athletes that are playing your favorite sports, and be okay with the fact that nights and weekends are going to have to become your favorite thing, because that's when sports happen. They very rarely happen during the day, and not very oftenly do they do that. It's usually playoffs, and stuff like that. So we've gotten incredibly lucky with every single person that's part of our team. Like, we all get it. We all row in the same direction. It makes honestly my job not stressful at all, because I know that I can depend on all you guys, and I hope that you guys know that you can all depend on me. Like, one thing, Bill and Chris, if you're listening to this, I know that you don't love it when I go out in the field like a ton, but there is no way in hell I'm ever going to ask anybody on the Hurrdat Sports team to do something that I wouldn't go do myself. That will never be the way that it is. And if you ever need help being taught something or whatever, like, that stuff's really important to me, because like it's hard to be in the trenches, and if you're there by yourself, like, that's not really cool. I don't know if I made any sense. I think I just
this is all I'm going to say. That right there is why Sausha's a great boss, because there are very few people that will be your ride or die, and they may say that they're your ride or die, but to live your ride or die, like, that's what keeps people here or wanting to be a part of this team, is because of the glue that is Sausha Durkan. I don't need to say anything else. Whatever she just threw out there, it's not coach speak. Like, that's what happens. And that's why people are here. That's why we are able to succeed, because it all starts at the top and it trickles down. We talked about the trickle down effect from the very beginning. Like, that right there is why I come to work every day with a smile, because I know that somebody's going to have my back.
Always, man.
End of day. Like, we're not trying to get all sappy, lovey-dovey. This is it. Like, this is how I feel. That's how she feels. That's how Cam feels. That's how you ask anybody on the team, they give you the same response about Sausha. Now, it may be different. Like, they may all have like a different like quality that they hit on, but they'll give you essentially the same response. No story is going to be different. And that's when you know you work for somebody that's great. And look, it starts at the top too. Like, I started at Sausha, go up at Bill and Chris. Mm-hmm. Like, the fact that we have people like that is it makes you never want to leave. It makes you want to stay and ride or die with these people. Gosh, what a great way to end this episode. Love it. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, that's another great addition to the Hurrdat Sports team. I don't really know what were we calling it, because we have like these things that we do for Hurrdat Sports that are like, hey, get to know our team. But Cam, like, what are we calling our team members that we're bringing on?
Oh, that's a great question. We haven't discussed that, but we should come up with something really good though.
Yeah, we should give everybody like a cool like little I don't know, chart to fall on.
Yeah.
There you go. We'll come up with something. And Sausha, we'll put you at the top, and then we'll build our family tree.
Just whip up another spreadsheet or something,
Put me even.
It's great. We've had Sausha, we've had Anna, we've had Avery, we've had David, we've had Kyle, which we should probably get Kyle back after that Baylor Shireman stuff, or we could maybe talk about it with Brando. We could talk about it with Brandon Tiedemann. We've had Robbie Lula. We'll bring on eventually DB, Anna Ambrose. Gosh, we're going to keep going down the list.
20-some people. Yeah.
We've got interns. We bring interns onto the show. I mean, there are so many people that make the engine go. But Sausha is the oil. Like, the engine wouldn't start without Sausha. So, Sash, thank you so much for being an awesome boss. Thank you for coming on the show. Cam, thanks again, and thanks to all of you that listen to Rogers Rule week in and week out. We'll be back on Thursday. See you then.